Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's presentation. My name is Janine Donnelly. I am the Manager of Webinars for IBM Systems Magazine, and I will be the moderator for today's event. We will be holding a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. You may ask an online question at any time during the event simply by entering it into the Q&A panel. If you experience technical difficulties during the webinar, please use the Q&A panel to alert us, and someone will assist you. Today's webinar, your mainframe systems management just won't cut it anymore, how to get it where it needs to be, is sponsored by BMC Software. Our featured speakers today are Jay Lipovich and Nick Packnos. Jay is Principal Product Manager on the Mainframe Solutions Strategy team at BMC Software. Jay engages mainframe sites in market sensing research to develop strategies that address mainframe infrastructure management needs. His primary focus areas are systems management solutions and MLC cost management solutions from BMC. Nick directs the product management team for BMC's mainframe solutions. Nick has directed the team that developed and brought to market 7 new mainframe solutions in the past 4 years, helping customers save millions with lower software costs and increased availability. Even with decades of systems management experience, digital engagement requires a different systems management approach. Jay and Nick will provide a checklist for evaluating your systems management efforts. So with our introduction complete, Jay and Nick, I will turn the presentation over to you.
Thank you, Janine. Nick and I welcome all of you. Thank you for attending. We hope that the topics we discuss and the information we share will be of value to you in your job and to your organization. Nick and I have been meeting with mainframe users around the world, and we're trying to learn about the challenges that they face and how they manage those systems in light of the evolution of business practices. Nick, why don't we start by having you share what we understand is a day in the life, if you will, or the job of systems programmer.
Sure, Jane. Good day, everybody. Even though it's been quite a while since I've been a systems programmer, we talk to them frequently, and some of the common things that systems programmers do relate to obviously software upgrades, maintenance. That's a key part of the position. Helping applications with their new deployments, their new projects, learning about their environment if there's someone who has been new to the company, disaster recovery exercises, and addressing audit compliance requirements, and certainly training newer workers, and being responsible at the end of the day from a systems management perspective to the business. But one of the big areas that every systems programmer I know, I would think, can identify with is firefighting. Usually triggered by a call, an email, a text, an outage. This is something that obviously can disrupt a day, a week, sometimes longer. And so, these are some of the common things, but we'd like to hear from you. That's what we've been hearing. We'd like to hear from the participants on today's webinar and give you a chance to interact in the conversation as well. So we would like to ask you for the polling question. Janine, if you can cover the first polling question now, and we could cover that right now.
Great. So as you can see, we've launched a survey, and please choose the answer that best describes your typical day and hit submit. And we will compile those responses and share the results with you. I also want to let you know that later this week we will be sending out a follow-up email with a link to a recording of today's webinar. And so some results are coming in. I do want to give it a few more seconds. We're on a little bit of delay in getting your results, and then we'll share those with you. Okay, interesting. I'm going to go ahead and send these results. There's definitely a consensus here.
And Janine, if you can just bear with us for one moment. We have a little bit of an internet connection problem. We'll have that addressed momentarily.
Okay, no problem. And I am going to resend these results because they have changed slightly, but far and away, days are planned, but interruptions leave items still to be completed, with about 2/3 of our audience responding in that manner.
And as we come back up, Janine, if you can actually give us some of the other results, I appreciate that, because we unfortunately have lost all internet connection here in the room, and we could talk to those results. If you could do that, that'd be much appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, great, Nick. Well, as I said, far and away, most people find their day planned but interrupted. And then it's kind of a 50-50, the next one there, in terms of structured and accomplish most tasks, and not planned but able to address issues that arise. Another thing we can do, gentlemen, is I could advance the slides until your system is back up.
I believe we're okay. Jay, are we fine now, I hope? Sorry, Janine. So we'll keep moving this along. This is live television, folks. Sometimes stuff just happens. So those are interesting results. You know, the plan, it doesn't basically surprise us. It certainly is interrupts. So, Jay, you know, you've heard from the users, and we are back now, thank you. So, you know, you talk to mainframe users. You know, what are you seeing? You know, how are you basically reacting and how they should react to this?
And Nick, what we're hearing from customers as we talk with them is there are four things really impacting the way mainframes being used and mainframes are being managed. It revolves around, if you will, the four V's: velocity, volatility, volume, and variety. So customers see a higher rate of activity. There's more unpredictable activity. Certainly there's more volume, and the type of work that's being done in their systems seems to be evolving. So when we look at data, this is from the 2016 Mainframe survey, the annual survey that BMC conducts. Typically we have nearly 1,200 respondents. And so this was looking at the impact of particularly digital business activity on mainframes and how they're seeing that impact the way their systems run. So as you can see, nearly 80% see increasing transaction volumes. Nearly 3/4 see increasing data volumes, but 2/3 see increasing volatility and unpredictability. And quite honestly, one of the ways that we've been able to manage the mainframe so effectively is because we knew enough about it to know what to expect. And so the introduction of volatility and unpredictability makes it a lot more challenging to use what we know in managing what might happen. The other two things that are happening is, number one, applications are changing faster. A business determines that there's a competitive opportunity or they need to respond to a competitor. They need changes in the applications, particularly the ones they present to customers. And so new application changes seem to be rolling out at a much greater rate than what we've traditionally seen in the mainframe. And finally, there's using new technologies. So nearly 3/4 of the survey respondents indicated that they're using Java on Z, and the introduction of new technologies adds yet another layer of complexity.
So, Jay, those are changes that seem to be making, you know, the mainframe IT area and the job much harder in terms of, you know, all the aspects that you just mentioned, and in terms of both the area of the data, the infrastructure, and the cost. You know, so it sounds as if this is all encompassing, but there seems to be more pressure than that, I would imagine, than just what we're basically showing here.
Well, there is, and as I noted in that last survey data item, the use of Java on the mainframe is increasing. So if you think about the way all of you are managing your environments, you have an LPAR and you've got a variety of technologies, most of which we've known for a long time, MQ and TCP/IP, more recent relative to things like DB2 KICS or IMS, which celebrates 50 years this year. You're probably managing more than one LPAR, and in some cases you may be managing tens, 50s, even hundreds of LPARs. So you add to that the complexity of Java. And the implementation of Java on the mainframe manifests in a lot of different places. It really depends on your organization and your applications. So in IMS, in KICS, in DB2 stored procedures, particularly in batch, which is a starting point for many companies, and then in WAS, and certainly in USS where the process is run. So if you take the complexity of what's been happening, and then of course multiply it by all of those LPARs that you try to manage, it's becoming more difficult to keep our arms around what's going on. Added to that is what's been happening to the mainframe over the years. This data takes a look at the average number of MIPS per full-time employee at a mainframe site. So a survey that looks at mainframe sites, and as you can see, over this period from 2005 to 2016, so 11 years, the number of MIPS per FTE has grown fourfold. And we know that in addition to the number of MIPS growing, what we hear from customers is that their responsibilities keep growing. So we had a systems programmer was in one of our briefings, and he was explaining that he had been a systems programmer for a lot of his career, and then somebody retired, and they told him, since you're doing KICS, we think you probably should pick up MQ as well. So now he's got some MQ responsibilities, and we see that happening at a fairly rapid rate as well.
So Jay, you've talked about the complexity, and you've talked about how there's actually fewer staff in being able to respond to this level of complexity. And to really sum it up, at least what we're seeing, and I think the audience would agree that there is obviously more rapid changes to applications. We've talked about the complexity, and Java was a perfect example of that. There are less subject matter experts to be able to address these issues. And for some of the folks, there's less understanding of the nature and the characteristics of the operating environment because of this level of complexity and this lack of experience. And there's really less time to find, analyze, and fix it. So really, the point is, how do you respond to that? What really you should do? And our belief is, you want to be a digital master of systems management instead of just an agent of systems management. And what do we mean by that? Really, when you think of it from a simplistic standpoint, an agent is someone who reacts to certain events. And over the course of the decades, we've done that very, very well. What's a digital master? When you think of a master, think of a chess master. Think of what a chess master really is all about. They not only see the entire board, the big picture, they think 2 or 3 or sometimes 5 or 10 steps ahead. When you are a digital master, you're not just thinking about how do I react to this outage or that outage, how do I react to that request or this request. You're taking a holistic picture and you're solving business problems. Now, of course, to be able to do that, you need the proper tools. And that's what we're going to be talking about that, Jay. But you've seen, obviously how this progresses throughout the environment, have you not?
We have. As we talk to customers, and they say, how do I understand where I am, and how do I understand how to get better and what that would look like? We view systems management, if you will, as a continuum. Some people will talk about maturity models. I like the idea of a continuum better because we're all on a journey. We're all not doing bad. We're not immature. We just look at ways to be more effective in some of the things we do. So one way to look at that is to look at this continuum. And we say that there's a foundation level we call enable, and that's where IT is enabling the business by delivering the services. It does that by managing the environment with the tools and the skills of the technicians that do systems management. As you move along the continuum to the exploit level, you start to exploit tools and skills and processes so that IT can meet service commitments, not just deliver the services, but meet commitments that they've made. And at the empower level, you now empower IT to make digital business commitments and deliver on those, and particularly cost effectively. And progressing along to the top, to become a digital master for systems management is delivering dynamic, intelligent, automated support of the digital business strategy of the organization.
So you've heard our definition of how you could progress through the systems management continuum. We'd like to hear from you. We have another poll, and again, we want to hear, give us an honest assessment of where you think you are. And so, Jean, if you could start the next poll, please.
Okay, Nick. So we've sent out the next poll looking for your input. So tell us where you think you are in the systems management digital master journey. And while we wait on those results, just a reminder that you can ask a question at any time by entering it in the Q&A panel. And we will be doing a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. And those results are starting to come in. I want to give it just another moment, Nick. Here we go, a little bit more in terms of responses. So again, we're on a bit of a delay, but I think we're ready, Nick, to go ahead. I'm going to send these results to the audience.
Okay. And it looks like we've got a pretty good spread here. You know, some people are obviously not certain about where they're at, and some people think they're exploiting. Interestingly enough, we don't really have anybody who has basically thought of themselves as a digital master. So, Jay, you know, you saw the results. You know, where should, you know, customers start on this?
So if we look at the potential benefits, we believe customers start by trying to figure out what can they do to make their business better. And so we start with looking at the benefits. At the enable level, what you're going to be doing is reducing the duration of outages, and we do that effectively. At the exploit level, you start to eliminate some outages before they hit the business and increase the productivity of a staff that has way too much to do and way too little time to do it. At the empower level, you should be able to significantly reduce outages, reduce the resource requirements, really maximize the productivity of the technical staff, and mitigate risk to the business services. And for some companies, the risk issue is larger than others. If you have a business where failing to meet certain service level agreements, whether it's online or in batch, results in penalties, then there's a financial amount associated with not meeting those service levels. Other organizations, the financial impact comes in customers who aren't happy, who eventually do they consider going to some other provider. So one of the questions that we get is, okay, what does this look like? How do I understand what will this look like? So at the enable level, what's going on is that most of the remediation of the problems is done in reaction to incidents that occur. A lot of it's manual. It relies on the deep technical knowledge of the SME to be able to accomplish it. In terms of how you use the tools available, the systems management, monitoring, it's mostly out of the box. You take what you've got, you look at the data, and you use it to help you resolve and solve problems. The focus tends to be on IT components. It's looking at the specific technologies or looking at specific hardware components. And it's possible at the enable level that you can experience some misses on service level agreements or service level objectives, depending on which you have. And as I noted, the primary business value is delivered because you're reducing the duration of some of your outages. At the exploit level, the goal is to intercept the problems with the tools before the failure happens. Now, there's still some manual effort involved, and you might implement at this level some limited basic automation to help do some of the remediation. You also look at your tools and you say, if I can tailor what I'm seeing, if I can tailor how it's presented, if I can tailor what it's doing for me, I can be more effective. So you start to do some tailoring. You also start to focus outside of a single technology, because a business problem running on the mainframe doesn't live just in one technology. It comes into the system, it's managed by the workload manager, it goes into KICS, KICS calls DB2, it may go into MQ, you may go across to different LPARs. So a lot of things happen between the technologies, and you start to manage across the subsystems instead of within them. In terms of service delivery, you're able to meet the commitments that IT's made for the critical business services, and you do this right, and you're eliminating some outages before they have an impact on your business. Now, at the third level, at Empower, the goal is for the problems to be intercepted and automatically resolved without having a failure. This is where you get to what's commonly referred to as proactive management. You use extensive automation. That reduces the manual effort. It frees up the technology experts to focus on the really difficult problems, which can't perhaps be solved by automation. You use a lot of built-in intelligence, rely on the tools to do the analytics and the fact-finding for you. And you rely on them to actually tell you, hey, this is where I should focus, and even here's what needs to be done, and wherever possible, oh, by the way, I fixed this for you. Is that okay? For business value, doing this at this level generally result in reduced outages, reduced resource requirements for the business, and that translates into reduced costs, and then especially mitigating any risk to the business from the operating applications that are critical. Now, this picture might be familiar to some. We're not suggesting it's familiar to everyone on the call. Mainframe's evolved. What it used to do and what it does today are significantly different. You might say, well, is the mainframe really significant in all types of activities? And the fact is, if you think about it, it really is. If you think about Amazon, you say, well, Amazon doesn't run on mainframes. Well, that's true. But if you do an Amazon transaction authorization, or when Amazon ships the product, the shipping, the tracking, the credit card, all of that hits back to a mainframe. And so with that level of change, the question is, are your systems management solutions right for the job? So what we thought we'd do is give you a checklist, and we'll talk through. Let's look at a systems management readiness test. So what we invite you to do as we go through and discuss these, just keep a little tally for yourself. How many of these would you check off? And you keep that number, and then we'll come back and let's explore what the number is and what can be done. So, look at these and ask yourselves, do we learn about problems by email, text, a phone call, or even worse, on social media? Do we have alarming in some of our tools, but is it ignored or turned off? Do we actually use few alarms because from a practical point of view, we don't have the time to research, create, and maintain threshold levels that would actually be meaningful? Do we ever have alarms that signal transient events? A spike in activity. You all rush around, you look at it and you say, well, that was, it came, it went, and that really wasn't a problem. So we didn't have to all respond to it. how much time do you spend, like a lot of time, triaging and resolving problems that really are fairly simple? Do you have war rooms, or whatever the appropriate term in your organization is, for when everybody gets together to resolve a problem? And what's the purpose of everybody in the room? They show up with data to show it's not my problem. So do you have those on a daily or a weekly basis? You know, what's interesting is, just as a data point, there was a survey of CIOs just a couple of years ago, and it was surprising that over 50% said they have war rooms on a weekly basis. So another question, is your monitor actually a noticeable consumer of resources and an MLC cost driver? When you're trying to triage problems, do you have to switch monitors to look into different technology stacks? And when you do switch monitors, do you have to reestablish the context for the problem? Because going from one to the other, it didn't let you be focused on the area where you'd already drilled into. Do you have to use a highly skilled technician, the local guru, to analyze the data to find the causes of things like looping jobs, for example? Do you have to manually resolve common issues, such as restarting the VTAM resources within IP? Do you manually analyze performance and log data looking for tuning opportunities? Do you find that there's some technologies you don't have the monitoring capabilities that you would like to have for Java, for IP, for USS, for MQ, some of the newer technologies, if you will? And in terms of managing your system, do you do manual capping, or are you not using capping at all?
So that was a pretty extensive list. So if everyone can, look at, what they've checked off, and if they can basically address this question again, Janine will poll you again, then we could see where you think you are on the systems management readiness test. So Janine, please, if you can open up that poll.
Thanks, Nick. So as you can see, that poll is now open. Check your little tick mark ledger there, see how many boxes you probably checked, or give us an estimate. We'll see kind of where the group stands in terms of readiness. So Jay and Nick, some results are coming in, but as I say, due to the delay, we'll give it another moment.
Okay. And as they come in, we are seeing, many of you are within that, the majority of you within that second area of the 4 to 6 area, which, obviously that's pretty good. And then there is, followed behind by those of you in the 7 to 10 category at both the top and the bottom end, not quite as much. So this is really interesting. Some of the poll results are still coming in.
And there we go.
So we're going to end the, I'm sorry, go ahead, Janine.
I was just going to say, there we go. I resent the final results, but yeah, nearly 50% are falling into that 4 to 6 range.
Yeah, and that's actually, that's pretty good. And, so really, we'd like to discuss with you now how you can actually increase that, your readiness. So Jay, how do you basically transform into become a digital master?
Yeah, as you look at the results, you look at your count, I'm sure being systems analyst and dealing with systems management, you know how to look at data. The more readiness you have, the more ready you are to be a digital master, the smaller your score would be. So everybody's on a journey, and as we saw from the poll results, people are in different places on that journey. One of the things that we understand as we work with customers is that we could help customers along that journey, and helping them become digital masters what we want to do is help you to be able to discover your assets dynamically, and then be able to monitor and manage those, to analyze the environment quickly, to automate as much as possible the resolution of problems, to optimize your resources. That's almost a continuous given for the mainframe. Whatever you do, it has to do it with fewer resources and continue to make the mainframe an even more cost-efficient platform. You'd like to be able to predict and plan for the effects of change before it actually hits you, and then ensure that staff, as we noted, dealing with a lot more responsibility and a lot more scope, so that the staff is empowered to be able to do that. So there are four things to look at in terms of how do you get to be a digital master. Proactive and dynamic are the first two. So what does systems management look like? What does great look like in systems management? So proactive, the idea of learning thresholds and what's normal. And that one of the questions on the readiness was, we hear frequently of mainframe shops where they don't use thresholds because setting a bad threshold just creates noise, or worse, you miss something important. So having good thresholds is important, but nobody has the time to really research and establish those. So self-learning from your environment of the thresholds that matter and what's normal is kind of the first step of being proactive. And then dynamically being able to manage thresholds. Your business is unique. No two businesses are alike. No two use cases of the mainframe are identical. So your shifts, the days of the week that have different levels of activity, periods of your business cycles, all of those are different. So for a package shipping company, for example, the period between November, Thanksgiving, if you will, Thanksgiving and the end of the year is a fairly critical period. And the thresholds that are meaningful for that period can be a lot different from the thresholds that are used during other parts of the year. And then having done the work to establish the thresholds and know what's valid and when they're valid, having an alarm process that filters out the transients, that basically identifies when an alarm really is meaningful and when you need to pay attention to it, and actually provides for gradations within that of it's meaningful and now it's meaningful and very critical. That helps you be more proactive. And then to be really proactive, you'd like systems management to tell you where are the opportunities for me to tune and improve the system before those things create a problem. The second part's dynamic. So dynamically, automatically balance capacity and performance and cost. And that can be done with the mechanism that IBM provided in capping. But it's hard to use capping unless it can dynamically react and know what's important in your environment so it makes the right decisions. Dynamic, intelligent, self-learning automation is the second piece of that. You want to automate as much as you can. And when you do that, the ability to dynamically learn about the environment enhances the ability to recognize when you've got a problem that needs attention. And probably every one of you in your organizations is using analytics in some form for your business. And so applying analytics to the systems management effort helps you get away from just looking at metrics and allows you to have information that you can use to make better systems management decisions. The other two pieces are intelligence and cost-effective. And an intelligent systems management approach recognizes the issues, identifies the action, and responds automatically. So some of the things, think about some of the tasks you have that are most challenging. One of them is first failure data capture, because you're always approached after the failure happened, and then you have to try to recreate it and create the data you need. So the ability to automatically recognize the failure and start capturing the detailed data that you'll need is the intelligence that systems management can have. And as I mentioned, you're managing not just an individual technology silo, but the business services across the mainframe. So you want to be able to see everything that the application touches from a single view. And because there's not much time and there's a lot of things to manage, having systems management that guides you to where the problem is makes your job easier. And we have to recognize that the way to success is not by isolating, but there's value in a variety of types of tools, and integrating with other vendors is one of the strategies that allows you to take whatever you're using and get a 1 + 1 = 3 out of it. And finally, as we mentioned, the mainframe is always under pressure for cost. So it needs to be cost effective, efficiently designed. One of the ways you're cost effective is by extensively employing zip processors. Integrating both the monitoring and the automation together is a way also of exploiting cost efficiencies. Collecting data once, even though it may be consumed many times, and finding and highlighting the opportunities to reduce usage, which also reduces cost in the system. So this may look like a wall too tall to scale, but BMC is actually helping hundreds of customers successfully become digital masters. So Nick, why don't you highlight some of the ways Mainview does this?
Sure, Jay. And again, many of you know your systems well, incredibly talented people who've been in the industry for quite a while, but at the end of the day, if you really want to become a digital master, you need the proper tools, and we'd like to contend that BMC Mainview is that proper tool. Firstly, fundamentally, BMC Mainview provides a centralized architecture. Why is that important? It allows you to integrate, because the mainframe can go through IMS, DB2, CICS, MQ, now Java, through the network. The centralized architecture allows you to have a single view, single span of control, and these are fully integrated solutions. So it makes it much easier for you to solve problems and basically go about your day and increase the availability. And the other beauty of this is that with the centralized architecture, the componentry is modular. You can snap in components, and you get that common look and feel as you do that. And really, when you talk about the 4 pillars of being a digital master of systems management, Mainview really covers that. The ability to see and manage your systems intuitively, with efficiency, and the key for any systems management tool, can you detect and resolve problems quickly and do it efficiently and effectively? That's key. And again, we do this through the single view and control, the central administration, which is key, being able to manage all these complex subsystems and goings-ons in the mainframe. Doing that centrally is key. And giving you that intelligent, proactive automation. And mostly, again, the other aspect of centralized administration is the fact that it makes the tool incredibly efficient. And that's key. At the end of the day, do you really, really want your systems management tool to put unnecessary overhead on your system? Think of the MLC costs alone that can basically cause. So again, this is an effective monitor, centrally managed, that's cost effective. And Jay, I understand you have some examples about how that manifests itself through the system.
I do, and I'll go through these fairly quickly, but you'll be able to see the digital mastery that I talked about with those 4 aspects in these examples. So the first one, looping jobs happen, and everybody handles them, and you say, well, no big deal. In Mainview, we think we ought to be able to automatically detect the looping job, raise an alarm, and automate a response. So if there's a known response, we can do that. And this is one of the places that we've also integrated with another vendor. So with CompuWare, one of the actions that we can do is detect a looping job, link to CompuWare's iStrobe product, and have it start gathering the data, because your next question is, where in the job was the looping occurring? And so we can automate that whole process and make you prepared to answer the question. IMS is an area where, as I mentioned, it's 50 years old this year, and the technicians who know it really well are starting to retire. So how do you know when a BMP isn't behaving properly? In Mainview for IMS, we scan the indicators, and we can flag the BMPs that are not performing properly, so you know right away where to look and what to do to fix it. On the dynamic activity, I mentioned capping. Mainview offers a cost optimization capability that includes dynamic capping. As you can see from the graph, the idea of dynamic capping is when critical work goes up and you need to increase the cap, the intelligent capping that we have looks at the other LPARs where there's not critical work, and it decreases the cap there. So the net is you don't use more resources, but you ensure that the critical work gets done. And one of the things that you ought not to have to do is just handle something that could be handled automatically. So in Mainview, our Mainview for Networks solution, we can detect when there's a V10 application failure. And we can automatically then reactivate, restart the resources, and it's under control. You determine how many times we ought to try to do that and what's going to happen. The goal, again, is to do things for you so you can focus on the more critical things that maybe can't be done automatically. I spent a time chatting about the idea of thresholds. So built into Mainview is a capability that we have to self-learn from your data what's normal, and then to recommend the thresholds that would be appropriate for each of the metrics, to dynamically self-adjust those, because as time goes on, what's normal for you may change, particularly in the digital environment, and then to automatically deploy those to your monitoring so you can see alerts that really are meaningful and that match up to the way you use the system. And I also mentioned the idea of first failure data capture. This is one in the network area, for example. You have a failure. What you want to do is do a packet trace. So in Mainview, our Mainview for Networks capability, when an alarm triggers the event and says we've got a problem, we know that we need to do a packet trace. The context information on how to do that and where is in the monitoring information. We automatically start the trace. When the condition goes away, then we stop the trace. So this is the automatic capture of the first failure data that you're going to need to be able to triage and resolve the problem. Mainview was designed to be efficient. It actually was designed not first as a single image monitor that then was used on multiple images, but it was designed for a sysplex environment to manage multiple images. So from a Tech Validate survey, where we asked Mainview users who'd compared Mainview to other products, typically they find that Mainview uses an average of 50% less CPU than the monitors they compared it to. And that's true across a variety of industries. It's not in a single industry, but in a lot of the customers that are using Mainview.
So those are really compelling points that you bring up, Jay, and really at a higher level, when we talk about Mainview, and again, Jay, thank you for those examples. You know, there are certain attributes and there are certain business relationships that we have that really make this key. First off, we talked about the architecture. We talked about how important that architecture is. You know, BMC is known as an innovator in the mainframe environment, and we'll continue to be that way. We believe in the mainframe, and we continue to come out with new products and solutions and enhancements to our current products. We'll continue to do that, and that unparalleled architecture that we have within Mainview is going to give you the efficiency, as we mentioned, and it's really a solution for the modern mainframe, which gets much more complex. Your peers. We are competitively replacing other solutions because your peers see the attributes that Mainview provides. Your peers see how they can solve problems much more effectively and more efficiently. We tend to replace customers, every month, sometimes as many as 2 to 4 per month. And we've been doing this for quite a while. And we've seen a 6-fold increase since 2004. Our partners. We believe that we just don't operate alone. We have a global network. We've got a very good partnership with CompuWare. We actually have some integration with their Stroh product. So you could basically use them to assist with your greater availability. So we have a very tight partnership with them. SCS Consulting, they're a firm that specifically helps you lower your licensing and cost management costs within the mainframe. We partner with them. And then CPT Global, they are professional services focused on cost reduction, do many, many things, but they're focused on mainframe cost reduction, and they are very, very solid partners. We just don't do it alone. And then finally, without having employees that are dedicated, passionate, not just about our company, but about the mainframe. We remain dedicated to the mainframe. We've got customers, we've got employees who have been with us, in some cases, for decades, mixed in with junior and newer level employees who have now caught this mainframe bug, who are just also really, really interested and dedicated to the mainframe. So we've got a mix of the young and the old, and this makes us a really, really valuable firm to do business with because our employees at the end of the day what makes it the big difference. And really, when we go to what the next steps really are, and what you should consider is monitors do a certain thing. We understand that, and at base level, they basically will monitor and tell you what's wrong, but we contend that monitoring is not enough. I think we hope that we've shown you today that there's much more to systems management than just base level monitoring. And you really should evaluate your tools. What you currently have, are they meeting the more complex requirements that you have for your business? Look at those gaps and basically, assess whether those benefits that perhaps Mainview can provide can really close those gaps. And so we believe that there is a new way of doing systems management. But Jay, I guess shouldn't take our word for it. We do have some data that attests to that, don't we?
We do. I mentioned the Tech Validate survey, so I just thought we'd share some of what those customers had to say. They said that Mainview reduces mainframe costs better than the alternatives they compared. They said Mainview helps them detect problems sooner than alternatives. Mainview helps solve the problems faster, and Mainview improves their productivity. So the goal of becoming a digital master in systems management is to be able to find, fix, and resolve problems so they don't have impacts on your business and so that your business can operate cost effectively. Now, we have an opportunity for you as well. I mentioned some data from the Mainframe survey. We are now in the process of doing the 12th annual survey. It is, we understand, the largest mainframe survey in the industry. As I said, we typically have over 1,200 respondents, and you can participate as well. So on your screen, there is a link where it says take the survey today. That is an active link. You go down there and click on it, it will take you to the survey. So you can click on it and then go back to that, and we invite you to take the survey, an opportunity for you to explain what you see as the future of the mainframe and what issues you think are ones that have to be addressed. So we hope this has been helpful to you. We hope you have the opportunity to look at where you are on your journey to becoming a digital master in systems management. And that as you do that, you might want to take a look at the capabilities that are available with BMC and Mainview. You can find that information at bmc.com/Mainview. I've also included our email addresses, jlipovich@bmc.com, nickpeknos@bmc.com. We welcome emails and questions there as well. So at this point, Janine, I think we can open up for questions and see what questions are out there.
Great, thanks, Jay. Okay, let's kick it off. Does it really matter what monitor I use? Can I get the same results with any of them?
Well, this is Nick Peknos. Certainly, I mean, as I mentioned before, monitors foundationally will capture most events and alerts. But really, when you look at the Mainview architecture of the centralization, sometimes you may not know exactly what subsystem or what area is causing a problem. And with the centralized architecture, Mainview allows you to hyperlink from one subsystem to the other to quickly find problems. And it's got a lot of intuitiveness built into it, common look and feel across all areas. And so it really does allow you to solve problems much more quickly. And on top of all of that, it does it in a cost-effective manner because, again, of the centralized architecture. So when you think of it, yes, all monitors at the basic level do the same thing. But we believe that Mainview does it much more cost-effectively, and it will allow you to solve problems much faster.
Okay. We use a best-of-breed approach to systems management. Why commit to a single monitoring solution?
What Nick was talking about actually touches on that as well. The best-of-breed approach has a challenge when you start trying to manage across the technology silos. And as we noted, applications today don't live in one technology. They flow across all of them. So as you try to solve a problem, the problem may manifest itself first in ZOS. Then you decide, it's it's a KICS transaction. At the end of the day, you could be drilling down and find out that the problem really was a garbage collection process running because of Java. The ability to move smoothly across the technology stacks in that kind of like that effortless analysis and that guided analysis doesn't happen if you've selected a best of breed, so you've got 2 or 3 or 4 different monitors as the way that you're trying to manage across all of that.
Okay. Is there any kind of certification for what you call digital master?
We're working on providing that. We believe that there are common tenets that a digital master has. There'll be much more to come on that. So you'll be hearing more from us because we really do believe, as Jay pointed out in the pyramid, we do believe that there are common attributes that everyone needs to have to move to the next generation of systems management. So you'll be hearing much more about us from BMC and from the Mainframe group.
Okay. So when I rated myself as to where I thought I stood on the table and then did the checklist, I was lower than I thought. Not sure I get the difference between enable and exploit. Can you comment?
Yeah, the difference between enable and exploit, at the enable level, you're totally reactive and you're dealing with services at kind of the individual technology level. So the focus really is about, hey, there's a problem, I've been alerted or told about a problem, I have to now go solve it. At the exploit level, you move beyond just dealing with the activities of an individual service into activities that may go across several technologies. And you start to use automation and alerts to be more proactive in what you're trying to do.
Okay. Does Mainview have any interfaces with Linux on Z or ZVM?
We do, although we're watching pretty closely what's happening. IBM is working on going to the KVM. We're part of the Linux One effort. We're trying to understand where customers are going with Linux. Because honestly, the experience we've had so far is that in mainframe sites, whenever we talk about Linux, we hear the systems management group say, well, Z-Linux runs on the mainframe, but it's managed by our distributed group. They manage all the Linux for us. So we'll be watching where that's going to decide if we should be doing more, or if, in our case, we also have the capabilities from BMC of managing it from the distributed side with our TrueSight product.
Yeah, what Jay mentions is really correct. From a strategy perspective, we believe that the market is shifting, and we're following it, and we're determining whether, what we currently do with MainView for Z-Linux is ample, and what changes we should make. So there's more to come on that.
Great. Can you give an example of analytics that cover more than just mainframe metrics?
Yeah, we met with a customer actually fairly recently, and he told us about something he was doing with mainframe metrics. They're looking at mainframe metrics, and they're also gathering, they're watching activity on social channels. And they've been able to correlate outage activity and social activity. Now what they're doing is they're looking at how do we start to see social as another data source that would help us know proactively when we might have a problem that isn't being picked up in any other way. So that's a really interesting application of using data outside of just mainframe data.
And the funny story about that is how they started doing this was that they found that on social media, if there was a service slowdown, there was comments on social media before their current tool, wasn't BMC's, before their tool was able to pick it up. So what was interesting is that it was an actual service slowdown that was being detected socially, and now they are correlating that with their mainframe department, so they can basically see, as Jay mentioned, the correlation between what the end users are thinking and saying and what they're commonly seeing in the mainframe environment.
Interesting. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. As you can see, Nick and Jay have been generous enough to provide their email address, so if you do have further questions, feel free to send those their way. I want to thank everyone for attending today's webinar, and I especially want to thank Jay and Nick for sharing their expertise with us today. As mentioned, we will be sending out a link to the recording of today's webinar, as well as to other valuable links to BMC resources. That concludes our webinar. Thanks again, and have a great day.